Cruelty to animals. Cathar Love 130. It's a big thing and a very serious matter to so many people, thinking, feeling people worldwide. This cruelty to animals, and what's worse, often unnecessary cruelty to animals. It seems those of us who've had pets and been involved with animals, that the same as when we're hurt, an animal is hurt, it calls out in pain, screams, howls, certainly makes itself felt. The fact, or makes it known that it's feeling pain. So one would think it's fairly obvious, and yet to so many people it's not. There are still people in the world who believe animals don't have feelings. And yet to others this is plain nonsense. It certainly was to the Cathars, because the Cathars respected all life, both animate and inanimate, which meant they also not only human beings, animals, birds, but they also respected mountains, the forests, rivers. I suppose, well, they wouldn't have known the word, but they're probably the first environmentalists. They were very down to earth. But animal cruelty, if one goes back into history, and really one has to understand why people would be cruel to animals. Because in the East we know, of course, Buddha and Buddhism and their attitude towards all animals, living things. And just quickly, one Indian emperor, he's a bit of a wild man, he was a conqueror, but he became a Buddhist, and he advocated, decreed that one must be kind to all animals, both wild and domesticated. And we know Buddhism influenced China, Japan. In fact, in Japan, from the period they call the Nara, right up until Emperor Meiji, which was in the 19th century, when Emperor Meiji he modernized Japan, the entire Japanese nation was vegetarian. One shogun before that said they could eat fish, and then Emperor Meiji lifted the ban altogether and said the Japanese could eat meat if they wished to. But even now, Japan still is not a great meat-eating nation compared to, say, the West. But vegetarians for 1,200 years as a nation. So we'll leave the East alone. Although one person who was in contact with the East, and that was Francis of Assisi, who he had some success in converting the Chinese, but he absolutely had. Of course, Saint Francis he preached the birds and the fish, and he obviously he had a love of animals and nature, which is somewhat rare in the history of Christianity. But when he tried to, he was telling them about the beauty of poverty, and the Japanese said, "No, what's good about poverty? There's nothing good about being poor." I happen to agree with that. We all want financial independence, at least. That we can do what we want to do, educate our kids or whatever. And the other thing that the Japanese wouldn't have anything of was hell. He said, no, they don't want to know about hell. So St. Francis said the only way he'll ever convert the Japanese was actually go through China first, and hopefully the Chinese would export it like they did Buddhism to Japan. But St. Francis, he convinced the Pope that the animals had souls, but unfortunately a later Pope, one or two later, decreed no, animals don't have souls, so they're back to base again. But the interesting thing is that if we go right back to the Egyptians, well, we know they influenced the Semitic tribes, and they had animal sacrifice in the temples. They've always had a down on pigs. So there was blood sacrifice there, and that was stopped. But there was that early tradition of that. And then if we go to the over to the Greeks, and we look at Pythagoras. Now Pythagoras was a vegetarian, and he promoted vegetarianism. I don't know if he knew the word, but he promoted that animals, that we needed to be kind and respect animals. Then later, Plato came on the scene, and the same thing. They advocated kindness to animals. The interesting thing about Plato was that he was the person. There may have been others before him, but not that we know of. But he was the one who advocated that people actually had a soul. So the concept of the soul arrived with Plato. But not only with the soul, the concept of reincarnation and rebirth also came with Plato. And that influenced the early Christians, the Gnostics of the early Christians. And so, unfortunately then, with the Gnostics and the early Christians, they, if we go along with them, we've got, after Plato, you had the Neoplatonists, and that was Plotinus and Porphyry. Now these people, they were very, very big into vegetarianism, and the fact that respect for animals, but all these the Hellenic, the Greek ideas from Plato with his academies and what they taught, this is all wiped out, including the school at Alexandria by Emperor Justinian in 532-34, around that period. So it came to a crashing halt. So that was from that point onwards you had Orthodox Christianity. Now Orthodox Christianity, the fly in the ointment is Aristotle, because Aristotle came up with the concept or the idea that women were unequal to men in reasoning and thinking, and therefore they shouldn't be treated with the same respect as was a man. That wasn't good for feminism. And but the same reasoning he actually said to the animals, because the animals can't think and reason, therefore they're inferior to humans, and therefore we don't need to give animals the respect that we would to humans, which was fair enough. But it was then that Christianity, with various, Saint Augustine, Aquinas, these people took those ideas of Aristotle and took them further and just said that animals don't have a soul. They don't go to heaven, or hell I presume as well, the same as a person does with a soul. And so with Christianity there was a long gap, because simply people took the word of St. Augustine and Aquinas that animals didn't have a soul, and of course the Bible in Genesis said the animals and birds and fishes and they're all there for man's. They're there for the purpose of man, for to be there for our purpose to be used as we wish. So these things together didn't make for animal rights, and obviously with that there would be animal cruelty. But then there was that French philosopher, a smart man by any standard, and he was in the 17th century, 1652, around that period. But he's very famous as a philosopher and mathematician, and he came up with a lot of the memorable quote, "I think, therefore I am." So, following on from that logically, animals don't think, therefore they aren't, or whatever. But he came up with the idea. He stated that animals basically are machines, robots, what we call them, probably a robot today, but he said animals are machine, and though a dog is howling and yelling as if it's in pain, it's actually not feeling any pain. So that wasn't great for animal rights at all, and that furthered people being cruel within the Christian area. I'm wandering around a little bit in history here, but going back to Muhammad, and well, we don't know a lot about him caring for animals, but he certainly he cared for cats, because there is one of the sayings, a hadith, and that's the sayings of Muhammad, that a cat was sleeping, and it was sleeping on his sleeve. So rather than wake up the cat, Muhammad actually cut the end of his long sleeve off to allow the cat to sleep. So he certainly had feelings for animals, and well, we certainly know from that story it was cats. Whereas the West has always had anything to do with witches. They related cats to witches, and the Templars were accused of kissing the backside of cats and what have you, and witches are, and of course they're good for burning. So in the West, in that idea, I won't say Christian, that philosophical idea from Descartes, that animals don't have souls and that they don't feel pain, it was going right up until, I think it's around about the 1830s, 1834 or something. But in any case, it was in Ireland. And over there, elsewhere as well, I'm sure, they used to pull a plough, but instead of a harness, they actually attached the plough to the horse's tail. So when the ploughman was ploughing a field and it hit a stone, it jerked on the horse's tail, and of course the horse let out, called out in pain, and so this was a common practice. So anyway, there was an act came out in Ireland in the early 1830, 1834, 1835, something around that period, and there was an act against the pulling tails of horses, and also pulling wool off live sheep, which would have been very cruel. So that's possibly the first one. After that, in America, in Massachusetts, they brought out their bill, an early bill in Massachusetts, a constitution, I suppose, and included in that was that one could not be cruel to animals. And it was actually, it may have been 1734 or around about that, for that act in Ireland, because I think it was in 1835 that the first Act of Parliament against cruelty of animals was enacted in a British Parliament. From that point onwards, right throughout the world, we had in various countries, we had people advocating rights of animals. Friedrich Nietzsche, not everyone's cup of tea as a philosopher, but he's certainly, I like him, but he said that right throughout the ages, he said, one aspect of a cultured mind was that they weren't cruel to animals. So here we are today, people right throughout the world are trying in their own way to make life better for animals, domesticated or wild. There are people, lots of people, there's vegan restaurants opening up in London and New York and Sydney, around the world, and these are people, some are vegans for health reasons, others are vegans because it's their way of not harming animals, and I think probably health-wise, certainly health-wise, compared to a normal Western diet, it's probably an excellent diet for one's health. But a vegetarian diet, absence of meat, beef, has certainly been around and in vogue for many years. So I don't know what to class myself, because if I go to someone's home, I eat what's put in front of me. I don't make a fuss. I couldn't care less what it is. For instance, I don't eat. I've never eaten margarine. I wouldn't eat it, but if someone made a cake or had margarine there, I'd use it. Not that I use butter or margarine much at all, but it's not a big deal. I'd rather not make a fuss and so forth. So I tend to go with the flow, but I like fasting. I like fasting sometimes for a few days at a time. I mean, some years back I'd fast 3 or 4 times a year for at least 3 or 4 days at a time. Not for any particular reason. I just like to fast, and I feel good after it, and I feel good. And I did mention some time back that I wanted to do a 10-day fast, which I did, and then on the 10th day, my partner Monica said, I want to do a fast too. So I did a fast with her the next day, and so I went into 11 days. But I feel great. I feel great. Now, that's not me. That's not me eating anything. That's just drinking grape juice and water. And so I'm not even eating wheat. This guy said to this vegetarian, he said, oh, you're a vegetarian. He said, because you don't want to kill animals. He said, no, I'm a vegetarian. He said, because I hate vegetables. Well, anyway, a bit stupid. So each to their own. I think do what you want to do, but don't ever shove it down. What you feel and what you write. That's fine, but don't push it down anyone else's throat. And the best way to do anything, no matter what it is by example. It's better to walk than talk, or walk and talk at the same time. But the biggest problem as regards cruelty to animals, which no one seems to mention or talk about, is the plain fact that the world is overpopulated. We know that the hamburger chain, McDonald's, just to supply the burger meat for that. And vast swathes of the Amazon jungle have been cut down in order to have cattle farms so they can supply cattle for the burger joint and the burgers. So that's not doing the forest any good or the world's environment. But the plain fact is that with people having children, and if you have any more than two, you're certainly adding to the world's overpopulation. And there are families with 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 10 kids. Now, that's fine if you've got a lot of money to educate them, and education is becoming expensive. But the big thing is, with this overpopulation, these people have to be fed. And the plain fact is that it's not the educated who are having the large families, it is the illiterate and uneducated people who tend to have the larger families. And these are the people who often rely on meat, animal products to survive. So I think it's great, and we can only do, they once was to say, think globally but act locally. Sure, we need to think on a global scale, but really all we can do is act locally, and it's how we live our lives, and by the example we give by how we live our lives, that we're going to affect others. But from the point of animal cruelty, with the population expanding as it is, and even China now is off the one-child policy and has now made the 3-child policy. These people all over the world, are going to need more food, and a lot of that food is going to be animal products. And unfortunately, this is not good. It means that many animals are going to be slaughtered, and sometimes, and oftentimes, they're slaughtered in an inhumane way. I talk and try and put forward a Cathar point of view as much as I know it, or as much as I've been told or given to me. And more and more, as I witness what's going on in the world in my lifetime, and I've been around a lot longer than most, Catharism, just as a philosophy, as a way of life, just becomes more and more beautiful. It respects everything. It respects animals and plants. It doesn't impose all these rules that you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't sing, you can't dance, you can't have sex, you can't drink wine. They're not interested in that. What they're interested in is your relationship, your loving relationship. But that means your loving relationship also with the animal kingdom, with everything, animate and inanimate. It means how you treat plants. It means how you treat the environment. But we aren't all going to jump on the Cathar path soon. But we are, and there's more, and that's a good thing for the world. Of course, in medieval, with the medieval Cathars, if you once you raised your family and you'd reached the ripe old age of 35 or 40 or whatever it was, and you wanted to pursue a more mystical and spiritual path, and then you took the consolamentum and you became a perfector, a perfecta, a good man, a good woman, bon femme, bon homme. And from that point onwards, you became, well, basically a vegan. But they had happy times. You know? At no point in Catharism does it say that one has to be miserable. if you can sing and dance and laugh and enjoy yourself, do so. If you don't, well, that's your problem. But so many things, there's an absence of joy. And in Catharism, it's not only about love, it's about enjoyment. And it's finding about who you are, but enjoying. Once you find out who you are, and on the process of finding out who you are, enjoy yourself. It's the joy of knowing who you are. Something I came across, and one keeps coming across. It's I'll diverge a second because I think it's important. Gnostics, it's often said by people that the Gnostics, the one thing that they said that they had was knowledge of the heart. And it's this knowledge of the heart, gnosis, knowledge of the heart, that separated, for instance, the Christian Gnostics from the Orthodox Christians. And of course but what's this knowledge of the heart? If one follows the Cathar, the Gnostic path, and one goes towards that, the point of it is having that personal connection with the divine. Now, with the divine could be anything, but for many people it tends to be a guide. Socrates had his daemon, not demon, daemon, D-A-E-M-O-N, his teacher, his guru, his teacher. And Socrates said that right throughout his life, his teacher told him, do this or do that, don't do this or don't do that. He was always advised by that. On the one occasion that Socrates wasn't advised, and the teacher kept quiet, was when he was ordered by the state to drink poison, hemlock, and with Plato and his friends around him, and he died surrounded by his friends. But he said to them, he said, if I shouldn't drink that poison, my daemon, my teacher, would have told me not to drink it. But my teacher's silent, so therefore I am going to drink it. Apart from that, they say I'm going to a better place. So what's the problem with going to a better place? So that's how Socrates put it. So Socrates had a voice. I had a period where, probably 7 years, my guide actually spoke to me regularly. She stopped occasionally. I miss it. But I know others. It's a voice but what I'm trying to say is this, once you have this, once you have it, whether it's a voice or maybe it's far memory, maybe you remember being a Cathar or something else in a past life, and you get this and you know it's a fact, you know it. It's not within your mind, it's within your heart. So it doesn't matter how smart the other person is and who they, whether they're a theologian or whatever it is, no matter what they say, once you know that, you've got that connection with, that's your connection with the divine. This is your knowledge of the heart, and it's not something that comes through reason, it's something that needs to be experienced. Even Plotinus, who was a follower of Neoplatonism, a follower of Plato, and this is what he said. He said, one needs this mystic experience, this connection with the divine, and then it doesn't matter what people say. Then you've had it, you've experienced it, you have knowledge of the heart, and I think that's an important thing as far as Gnosticism and Catharism is concerned. So I veered away from cruelty to animals, but looking at it and looking back through it, we can see how one person, in this case Aristotle, and Aristotle said women are unequal to men, and therefore we should treat people who are unequal, we should treat equals equally, and we should treat those who are unequal unequally. And the same applied to animals. So animals should not be treated as equals. So with that little sentence, he had other people, theologians within Christianity, the Catholic Church, they expanded on that, and so animals didn't have souls and women were second-class citizens. So because they took the Aristotle's ideas and they expanded on them, and that's affected all aspects of Christianity and has been a major influence in what became cruelty to animals. Be kind to everybody, and that includes our animal friends. Bye for now.